Let's again recapitulate what we have discussed about research methodology. Remember, the most important thing is the problem that we are going to address. What is the problem that we are going to address in our research? Our research should contribute something. It should solve the problem of the industry, or it should solve the problem of the society, or it should contribute to better life for the humanity at large. So the contribution of the research should be something important. And if the research fails to make any significant contribution, then there is no point in doing the research. So the first major challenge that we have discussed in research is identification of the research issue, research problem. And from that, we have moved on to discuss literature review. And in our discussions, we have identified how to conduct literature review, how to identify important research gaps. I again will summarize the entire discussion that we have discussed yesterday. Today, we are fortunate that we have plenty of websites available which can help us in undertaking literature review. You may become a member of SSRN. You may become a member of ResearchGate. You may become a member of researchers. You may become a member of Elsevier's and others. Plenty of such websites are there. You become their member and write your keywords in the search option, and immediately you can find plenty of research papers on that particular keyword. And most of these papers are freely accessible. And if they are not available, you can request the author, who may provide you for academic purpose research paper. For example, on ResearchGate, I often get requests from other researchers that I want this paper, full text, and I send them. So you should also become a member of ResearchGate, SSRN, and all such professional forums. Almost hundreds of such websites are there, so there is no dearth, and that will help you tremendously in collecting required data. What are the data that you require? At least 40 to 50 research papers, full text papers, so that you can undertake your literature review. So if you have some 40 to 50 research papers related to the topic on which you plan to undertake research, then find out gaps. What are the research gaps? So that you can narrow down your research objective, bring it to pinpoint. If you are doing a project study, master study, or graduate study, your objective may be very broad. Plenty of things may be mentioned. This is my objective, this is my objective, this is my objective, this is my objective. Fine. But if you are doing a doctoral study, narrow down your objectives as narrow as possible so that the research is very intense. Narrow the focus, the more intense the study you will be able to do. Because the objective at doctoral level research is to undertake a very intensive study on a very narrow field of study. So bring down your focus to a very narrow subject. This is the starting point. If somebody says, I want to do this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, then probably that person is not doing doctoral study. Problem is, the person is probably still at graduate level study or postgraduate level study, where the purpose is to get a basic overview of a few fields and summarize them and present them in the form of a report. But if you're doing a doctoral level study, dear friend, you have to narrow down your research. My research objective is to identify key aspects regarding problems faced by entrepreneurs in the field of hospitality industry. Now, this is a very broad objective, very broad area. This kind of study need not be at the doctoral level. This kind of study may be conducted at the project level. Maybe if you are doing a master's in hospitality, you may conduct this kind of study. So better avoid. So look into a very narrow field that has to be studied. But before you study, make sure that the literature review justifies it. Prepare a table, an Excel sheet or a table, and write down this study, this finding, this research gap, this study, this finding, this research gap. Prepare a table. That will help you. For example, a study by Arnold Singh found this, and research gap. The study by the Arnold Singh found these are the research gap. Arnold Singh mentioned that the study, there is a need to study this. Every researcher writes at the end of the research paper some key areas for future study, some gaps. They will mention these are the areas where future and where more intense study is required. List down them collectively. Now, Arnold Singh mentioned that Arnold Singh carried out a study, let's say in 2016, and he identified that the hospitality industry is facing some problems. Then in the research gaps, he mentioned there is a need to undertake a detailed study about the marketing mix used by the hospitality sector. Research gap. That study was in 2016, but in 2017, Kajal Mathur had conducted another study wherein she had studied the marketing mix used by the hospitality sector, and she had identified in the research gap that there is a need to undertake detailed study about positioning in international market by the hospitality sector, the positioning strategies. Now, the research gap has been narrowed down. The research gap has been narrowed down. Earlier, there was a need to undertake a study of marketing mix. Now, it has been narrowed down to only positioning strategy. Snehalata ji had carried out a study in 2019, wherein she had studied perceptual mapping and positioning strategies. And she had written at the end that there is a need to undertake a detailed study about post consumption review in the hospitality sector. So the research gap has further been narrowed down. This sequencing has to come in your literature review. A table has to come. Each issue that you are studying at the literature review must be taken up, written down. Mr. Arnold has identified this thing. Snehalata ji identified this thing. Rahul identified this thing. And each paragraph must be prepared. A comprehensive literature review helps you substantially in multiple ways. How? One, comprehensive literature review will help you in narrowing down your research focus. Second, comprehensive literature review will help you in preparing at least 2 good papers. Yes, because through your literature review, you are able to prepare a review paper. Review paper, yes. And review papers are really wonderful. If you will write 20 papers and out of them 2 are review papers, believe it, those 2 papers will give you 1,000 citations. Yes, the review papers are read very widely. So if you have prepared a review paper, it is available on internet. All future researchers in that topic will definitely read your review paper, right? So there is a difference between a research paper and a review paper. Can any one of you summarize the difference? All of you know the difference. Can you summarize the difference between a review paper and a research paper? Any one of you? Can any one of you try to? Yeah, welcome.
Yes, sir. So, review paper is nothing but analyzing the paper and talking about its pros and cons. But when you talk about research, it talks about new findings. It talks about new implications of the research paper or the new thing which you are finding out.
Yeah.
And whereas a review paper is just that
Wonderful.
which
Thank
have already
you.
done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arnold Singh. Very good answer. Wonderful. I repeat what Arnold has said. Research paper brings a new piece of knowledge, which is based on strong evidences like experimental study or market survey or some other study. So a research paper adds a new piece to the pool of existing knowledge. And a review paper is nothing but a review of the existing literature available on the subject. It gives analysis of the previous researches, all the researches which have been conducted so far. So the difference between these two words are very clear. One is review paper and one is research paper. A research paper is new piece of knowledge, a new piece of addition to the pool of knowledge through research, maybe based on quantitative or qualitative philosophy. And a review paper is a review, summary of all the researches which have been carried out till date. All significant, thousands of researches may be there, but I mean, you have to take up, I mean, important ones. Generally, when we are doing a research, you start with the latest researches, the research of 2000 to research of 19. Then connecting to that, you may have to connect to that with the research of 1917 or 1916 or 1915 or 1914. In this way, you have to connect them and then you have to create. And generally, there is no need to take into account a research which was carried out in 1901 or 1920. But then if something is required to connect well, then you may relate to that also, that okay, in 1925 research was conducted on this topic, and then again in 1975 this study was conducted, and then again. So sometimes, rarely, but mostly the current researches are expected to summarize the previous researches, and therefore you may have to review all these. So review papers are very important for you. Research papers are also important, but I'm not saying that research papers are not important. They are also important. Review papers are very important. Why? Because whenever a person is starting research, he would definitely read and give reference of a review paper. For example, you are planning to undertake a study on, let's say, valuation of companies. What is your starting point? You will go through some 50 papers on valuation of companies. Among them, which paper would you like to read first? Obviously, review paper. You will go through a review paper on valuation of company first, because that review paper will give a summary of all the researches which have been conducted on valuation of company till date. So that is your starting point, and that will enable you to create a pictorial map in your mind, what you have to study, what are the things that you do. So review paper solves your problem, right, in the beginning of your research. So reading a review paper is essential. So I am telling you, not only read review paper, but also write review paper. So review paper, when you read it, the review paper will give a complete summary of all the researches so far. It will give a tabular form of analysis. What are the researches? What are the key findings? What are the uh, conclusions that can be drawn, what are the research gaps that are identified. Wonderful. That is, I mean, it is going to help you tremendously in your literature review, isn't it? So review paper is the starting point. And once you have read the review paper, then you can identify what are the other areas where you have to pay attention. You can pick up the material from there. So review paper, read other research papers, then prepare your own review paper, submit it for publication, and wait for the time. You will get 1,000 citations. How? Because in future, somebody else will do another study on valuation of company. And that person will read your review paper, and that person will give reference of your research paper. What will happen? Your citation will keep on increasing, isn't it? Always conduct a study on a subject on which in future more and more people are going to read, more and more people are going to search your paper, and your research paper becomes the most important benchmark for others. So what will happen? Everybody who will come to start studying that subject will give your name as a reference, and that will help you because your citation will increase, isn't it? So these are very, very important points to note, right? These are very, very important points to note. I do not know whether you have really paid attention to these points or not, but these are very important because all of you might be involved in undertaking literature review right now. But are you involved in writing review paper? I believe no, you are not writing. Now, with my request, I am making earnest request, write review papers, publish them. And I am sure this will be helping you tremendously. I will give you a piece of advice. Don't bother about which journal to publish, selecting a paper. There are some journals which won't give you reply. You submit your research papers, they will not give you any reply for next 6 months. You're wasting your time. In 6 months, the paper becomes obsolete. If you write to some journals, they will send it for blind review, and after 6 months, they will send you rejected. Your paper is rejected, and then you get disheartened. Your motivation level gets badly affected. In the beginning of your research career, you require motivation, you require encouragement. So my piece of advice here is, once you write your paper, the first paper that you write is a review paper. This is the first paper that you write. So when you prepare a review paper, get it reviewed by your own friends, by your own supervisor, by your own colleagues, by other professors to whom you know were well connected to you. Then request them, please check it out. Before sending them, use Grammarly and other softwares available to check for grammatical errors, to check for spelling mistakes, correct them, prepare a basic structure, very well written, compare it with other review papers, send it for peer review to your friends. They will review, they'll find out some mistakes, they will suggest you, this is how you have to improve. Based on that, you improve. And then publish a paper on SSRN. This is a wonderful website, really wonderful website, SSRN. This is a wonderful website. If some journals would be interested, they will collect this paper from SSRN, make a request to you to permit that this paper be published in another journal. They will seek your permission and they will publish in journal. Otherwise, SSRN itself is a very good website, right? After it is published in SSRN, then you can share it on ResearchGate and other forums, so that it is available for wider use. More and more people are able to read it and submit their comments, right? I've not discussed about plagiarism because if you are writing in your own language, if everything you are writing in your own language, there's no need of plagiarism checking. It is your original work, no need. And if you have copied something, then this itself is a crime. Don't do this crime. You cannot copy any material from any other text. So no question of that, no discussion of that. And if you're writing something in your own language, it will be 100% original. No need to worry about it. So get it published on SSRN. And once it is published on SSRN, share the links on various platforms, like, for example, share the link on ResearchGate and all academia and all such platform. Academia is also very good platform. And of course, in case you have, used some quotations in between, then be very careful. These are not permitted. Even if you are quoting with inverted comma, with details, even then there may be problem. Then in that case, you may use Turnitin or other softwares for checking the plagiarism report, so that this is within the acceptable limits. Acceptable limits are, should be, the copied material should not be more than 10 to 15% in any case. That should be your goal, right? So, in tomorrow, we will again continue our discussions on these issues. I stop the discussion now and welcome your questions, suggestions, feedback, and request all of you, please share the information about this class to wider audiences, so more and more people can join and can work. There's no need for a person to be a PhD scholar to join my class. It is available to everybody and anyone. Even a person who has not gone to any formal school or college can also join if he can understand the language part. Because what I am trying to use are simple words. If I use a technical word, I try to explain it to make it as simple as possible. Even if by chance any technical word comes, please ask that technical word. I will try to explain it in simple words, because the purpose of knowledge sharing is the central purpose. The purpose is not to boast of knowledge. The purpose is not to highlight a technical word. The purpose is that the knowledge should be shared in as simple words as possible.